All right. So are you ready to like really boost your English fluency in just 30 days?
That's ambitious.
Ambitious. We've got some advice that might just help you pull it off. Think of this deep dive as a crash course in accelerated language learning. We're diving into a conversation between Alex, he's one of the 30-day goal, and Sophia, who's got this whole plan laid out for him.
What I find really interesting here is that Sophia breaks it down into these bite-sized 15-minute chunks. It really speaks to how we can fit learning into even the busiest of schedules, doesn't it?
It totally does. And before we get into the specifics, I think it's important to understand where Alex is coming from. He's not looking to become a Shakespeare quoting scholar here. His goal is to comfortably navigate everyday conversations. You know, talk about his hobbies, what he did that day, that kind of thing. I bet a lot of you listening can relate to that.
Absolutely. It's about achieving what we call functional fluency, being able to actually use the language in real-world situations. It's a brilliant place to start.
Okay, so Sophia is all about structure and consistency, which makes sense. But the 15-minute thing, is that enough to really move the needle?
That's where it gets fascinating. There's a growing body of research that shows consistent, even short bursts of practice can be more effective than sporadic cramming sessions. It's like building muscle memory for your brain.
So let's get into this daily plan. Sophia kicks things off with a 15-minute vocabulary boost, first thing in the morning.
She suggests learning 10 new words or phrases, flashcards, apps, whatever works. But the crucial part is actually using them in sentences throughout the day.
And that's where the magic happens. The science behind this is called active recall. When you actively use new vocabulary, you're forcing your brain to retrieve it, which strengthens the neural connections and makes it stick.
Makes total sense. Next up, mid-morning, it's 15 minutes of listening practice. Podcasts, YouTube, even your favorite English TV show, doesn't matter what you listen to. Not as much as you might think. The key here is exposure to the natural rhythms and intonation of the language. Sophia called it passive immersion. Almost like osmosis, you're absorbing the nuances of spoken English without even realizing it. It's how we develop an ear for the language, which is essential for both comprehension and pronunciation.
Like the osmosis analogy. Now, this one is a little intimidating for me personally. 15 minutes of speaking practice in the afternoon, even if you're alone.
Exactly. And I get why that feels awkward. But think of it this way. Every time you speak, even if it's to yourself, you're reinforcing those neural pathways, getting more comfortable with the sounds, the flow.
So I can literally just describe what I'm doing. Like I'm making a cup of tea, now I'm adding milk.
That's a great start. You can also read aloud, practice those new vocabulary words, even have imaginary conversations. Remember Maria, the woman Sophia talks about? She swore by this technique, especially when she didn't have anyone to practice with at first.
We'll definitely have to dig into Maria's story later. It's inspiring to hear about real people making this work. Okay. Last 15-minute chunk for the day. Evening time. Grammar and sentence structure. Is this just about memorizing rules?
It's more about understanding how the language is structured. Sophia's big on focusing on the building blocks, verb tenses, common sentence patterns. This is where things like writing a few sentences using the grammar you've reviewed comes in. You're actively putting that knowledge into practice.
So that's the daily plan. 4 15-minute activities, each with a specific focus. I'm curious, though, what about people who, like Alex, don't have a readily available speaking partner?
That's a common concern. Sophia actually addresses it head on. Remember those solo speaking activities we talked about? Recording yourself, talking out loud. Those are great for building confidence and fluency, even when you're alone. But there's more to it than that.
Let's hear it. What else does Sophia recommend? So beyond those solo exercises, what else does Sophia suggest for people who might not have easy access to a speaking partner?
Sophia is a big advocate for creating an English bubble, surrounding yourself with the language as much as possible. And it's not just about passive listening either. It's about actively engaging with the language.
Okay, give me some examples. How do you create this English bubble?
Well, think about it. You can change your phone settings to English, switch your social media feeds to English, even start reading news articles or books in English. It's about immersing yourself in the language in a way that fits seamlessly into your daily routine.
I never thought about switching my phone settings. That's a good one. But Sophia doesn't stop there, right? She talks about real-world practice, too.
Absolutely. It's one thing to practice in isolation, but to really solidify your skills, you need to put them to use in authentic situations. Sophia gives a few great examples.
Like what?
Well, she talks about the classic example of ordering food at a restaurant in English, even if you're not in an English-speaking country. It's a low-stakes environment where you can practice using everyday vocabulary and phrases.
And I bet that builds confidence too. It's like, hey, I did it. I ordered a meal in another language.
Exactly. Another example Sophia mentions is asking for directions in English, even if you already know the way. It's about pushing yourself outside your comfort zone and using the language for a real purpose.
So it's about finding those little opportunities to flex your English muscles in everyday life.
Precisely. And the more you do it, the more natural and effortless it becomes. But even with all this practice, it's easy to lose motivation if you don't see tangible progress.
That's where tracking your progress and staying motivated comes in, right?
Yeah.
What are Sophia's tips for this?
She has some great advice. First, she suggests keeping an English journal to document your learning journey, jot down new words and phrases, reflect on your progress, even vent about your frustrations. It's a way to stay connected to your goals and track your growth over time.
It's almost like a fitness journal, but for your brain. I like that.
Another powerful tool Sophia recommends is recording yourself speaking at the beginning and end of the 30 days. Hearing the difference in your fluency and confidence can be incredibly motivating.
That's brilliant. And speaking of motivation, what about those times when you hit a wall or feel like you're not making any headway?
We all experience those moments, it's natural, but Sophia has some strategies for navigating these challenges.
Lay it on me. I need all the help I can get.
Her first piece of advice is to revisit the fundamentals. Sometimes when we hit a plateau, it's because we haven't fully mastered the basics. So going back and reviewing those core grammar concepts or foundational vocabulary can be surprisingly helpful.
So it's like going back to the gym and working on those essential exercises to build a solid base.
Exactly. And sometimes the best thing you can do is simply change things up. If you're feeling bored or stuck in a rut, try a different learning method or explore a new type of content. Maybe instead of listening to podcasts, you watch an English movie with subtitles, or try reading a graphic novel.
Variety is the spice of life, as they say. Okay, so we've got the tools, we've got the plan. But what about mindset?
Mindset is absolutely key. Sophia emphasizes the importance of staying positive and celebrating small victories. Language learning is a marathon, not a sprint. It's going to take time and effort, and there will be bumps in the road.
Easier said than done sometimes. But I get it. It's about focusing on the progress, not the perfection.
Precisely. And remember, everyone learns at their own pace. There's no need to compare yourself to others. It's your journey, and every step forward is a win.
Okay, so before we wrap things up, let's talk about Maria. Sophia shares her story as an example of someone who made this 30-day plan work. I'd love to hear more about her.
Maria's story is incredibly inspiring. She started with no prior English experience and was initially quite intimidated by the prospect of learning a new language. But she was determined, and she committed to following Sophia's plan.
So how did she actually go about it? I'm curious about the specifics.
Well, she really embraced those language apps we talked about earlier. She found them to be a fun and engaging way to practice vocabulary and grammar. She also made a habit of watching English movies with subtitles. That's a fantastic way to pick up on natural language patterns and pronunciation.
And did she have people to practice with, or was she mostly doing things on her own?
She actually took advantage of online language exchange platforms. That's where you connect with native English speakers who are learning your language, and you basically swap skills. It's a fantastic way to get real-life conversational practice.
I can imagine that really helped her get comfortable speaking. What kind of results did she see after those 30 days?
Well, after just 1 month, Maria was able to hold basic conversations in English. And get this, she even gave a presentation in English at work. Talk about a confidence boost.
Wow, a presentation. That's incredible. But it sounds like she didn't stop there.
No, she didn't. Maria's story is a great example of how initial success can fuel ongoing motivation. She kept practicing, kept pushing herself, and eventually became fluent in English. And here's the best part. She now helps other people learn the language, sharing the strategies that worked for her.
That's so fantastic. I love that she's come full circle. It really shows that this isn't just some quick fix. It's about setting yourself on a path to lifelong learning.
Exactly. Maria's story demonstrates the power of consistent effort and the ripple effect that one person's language learning journey can have.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Sophia's 30-day plan, what are the key takeaways for our listeners? What do we really want them to walk away with?
The biggest takeaway for me is that significant progress is possible in a relatively short amount of time if you have the right approach. Sophia's plan provides a great framework, but it's important to remember that language learning is personal. What worked for Maria might not work for everyone.
That's why it's so important to experiment and find what clicks for you.
Right. Absolutely. It's about tailoring the plan to your own learning style and preferences. Maybe you're a visual learner and flashcards work wonders for you. Or maybe you're more auditory and you thrive on listening to podcasts. The key is to be self-aware and adjust the plan accordingly.
So it's not just about following a set of rules. It's about taking ownership of your learning journey and making it work for you.
And remember, language learning isn't just about the destination. It's about the journey. Embrace the process. Have fun with it. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. Those are often the moments where the most learning happens.
I think that's a great note to end on. So if you're feeling inspired to take on your own 30-day challenge, think about what your Maria moment would be. What specific goal could you achieve that would light that fire under you?
Maybe it's finally feeling confident enough to strike up a conversation with that English-speaking colleague. Or maybe it's understanding your favorite English language band's lyrics without needing to look them up. Whatever it is, visualize it.
Yeah.
And let it guide you.
It's time to take action. Sophia's plan provides the roadmap, but the journey is yours to create. So put on your explorer's hat, grab your metaphorical compass, and get ready for an adventure. Who knows what amazing discoveries await you on the other side of fluency?
And remember, we're here to cheer you on every step of the way. Happy learning.